Okay, let's unpack this. Have you ever, looked up at the moon and wondered what secrets it really holds?
Mm,
I mean, beyond the craters we all know, the dust, there are these whispers, theories, even photos that suggest our closest neighbor might be way more dynamic. And maybe, just maybe, not quite as uninhabited as we've always thought.
absolutely. And the sources we're digging into today, they really challenge the standard picture. We're going to look at claims of an active, intelligent presence right there on the moon. And we'll contrast that with the big scientific search for ET life, SETI, across the cosmos. It really makes you ask, what if the evidence isn't light years away, but has been right above our heads this whole time?
Right. So our mission today is to sift through some really intriguing stuff. We got a book making some, frankly, wild claims about lunar anomalies based on NASA photos, even insider accounts. And then we've got the big picture view of the global search for intelligent life. We're looking for those key insights, those surprising facts that might leave you looking at the moon and maybe the whole universe a little differently. So let's dive right into those really bold claims from George Leonard's book, Somebody Else is on the Moon. His main idea isn't just, oh, there's something there. It's that the moon is occupied, actively being worked on by smart beings, maybe not even from our solar system, and they're literally changing the surface. He even hints the U.S. and Soviet moon missions were this sort of desperate cooperation because they knew. That's quite a starting point.
It really is. And what's interesting is how far back some of these, let's call them unsettling observations, seem to go. Leonard talks about lunar transient phenomena, LTPs. Reports go back to the 1700s. We're talking glowing triangles, red smoke, lit up orbs, weird black spots with white edges, dazzling flares, even light explosions. Figures like Klein in the 1700s reporting strange lights in crater Plato. And Emanuel Swedenborg, also back then, claimed planets were inhabited, even describing huge, tall, Quaker-like people on the moon. Now, sure, publications like Sky and Telescope much later in 91 suggested natural causes for LTPs, things like tides, thermal shock, meteor impacts, plausible stuff. But Leonard's argument is that these explanations just don't cover everything that's been seen. There's a persistent mystery there.
And it gets weirder when you move from just lights to actual, structures, evidence of artificiality. Leonard quotes Dr. Farouk El-Baz, this is the guy who taught geology to the astronauts, right? Saying there were spires on the moon several times higher than any constructions on Earth. That's a huge claim. And science editor Ivan Sanderson just flat out said architected constructions were all around the moon. These aren't maybes for them.
Exactly. And Leonard points to specific NASA photos showing things that, well, if you take his interpretation, are just mind-blowing. He talks about seeing what look like enormous machines, vehicles, some supposedly over a mile high, made of intricate metalwork, things apparently reshaping the surface, pushing dirt, knocking down crater rims. He mentions X-drones that seem to be spraying something to smooth out craters or raise dust, like in King Crater. And then there's this oversized cannon and other oblong shapes he thinks are for power, maybe supplying atmosphere for underground bases. It gets pretty detailed. He even describes machine-tooled specimens in the Sea of Tranquility, seeing perfect squares and diamonds that he thinks are openings to huge underground vaults, plus these control wheels in craters looking like giant screw heads, plumbing entrances. One key example for him is this prize crater near where Surveyor I landed. He says it looks perfectly engineered with a diamond-shaped inner part that can apparently open and close, and huge domes in Alpine Valley, like 2 miles wide, half a mile high, big enough, he says, for a whole American town.
Wow, okay, that's a lot to take in. But looking at old, sometimes blurry photos, how does Leonard get past the idea that maybe we're just seeing shapes in the noise? Pareidolia, our brains love patterns. Seeing a mile-high rig in a grainy picture seems like a massive leap.
It is a leap, absolutely. Leonard's argument really hangs on the consistency he sees across different photos and the sheer scale he's attributing to these things. He argues it goes beyond just random patterns or tricks of light. For him, it's not if they're structures, it's what are they and who built them. That's his perspective. And he doesn't just see static things, he talks about ongoing activity, like in the Borealis crater, where seismic gear apparently picked up impressive ground shaking,
Yeah.
signals coming from under another crater, Lubiniki. He theorizes it might be the sound of giant gears grinding, actual machinery working now.
Okay, so if there's all this activity, giant machines, possible bases, why isn't this front page news? Leonard suggests a cover-up, right?
Yeah.
Operation cover-up.
Yes, that's his term. He speculates that things like mists or vapors, reportedly seen near impact sites like Ranger 7s, might actually be deliberately generated to hide what's going on. Camouflage, essentially. He even thinks this intelligent activity produces waste gases, vented through nozzles or smokestacks, so active concealment.
And this ties into his feeling of getting stonewalled, doesn't it? He talks about trying to get straight answers from NASA scientists and feeling like they were almost programmed to just default to natural explanations for everything. He mentions Buzz Aldrin dismissing UFO talk, suggesting this whole need-to-know culture.
Right, and some of the most startling claims come from quotes attributed to people like Dr. Sam Whitcomb, supposedly a former NASA scientist. Whitcomb apparently told Leonard that inner circles of government do believe there's an intelligent race on the moon. Not human. Probably not from our solar system. That's huge. Whitcomb supposedly also said that actual changes are happening on the moon incredibly fast, like within days, and that this led to secret briefings of top people around the world because the activity was so striking. Now, these are secondhand claims in the book, but if even remotely true.
Wow. It makes you think about others who hinted at similar things even way earlier, like Morris K. Jessup asking who was beating us to the moon back in the 50s, or General Douglas MacArthur warning about a potential interplanetary war around the same time. It all culminates in Leonard's most ambitious theory that the moon itself isn't natural, that it could be a vast spaceship driven here millennia ago after some disaster, and the occupants are still there repairing it, maybe even planning to leave someday.
That is a staggering concept. And he tries to ground it a bit by connecting it to other similar ideas, the theories about Mars's moons, Phobos and Deimos, maybe being artificial. Their orbits are a bit weird. People have speculated they might be hollow based on how they move. And Arthur C. Clarke, famously, wrote fiction suggesting Jupiter's first moon could be an alien ship. So, while Leonard's moon as a spaceship idea is extreme, the underlying theme of questioning the natural origins of things in our own solar system, it does pop up elsewhere. It's a fringe idea, but a persistent one.
So the moon might be artificial, or have artificial structures, or maybe none of that is true. But it definitely shifts the focus, doesn't it? Are we looking for life in the right ways? Which brings us neatly to the wider scientific search, SETI. How did that all start?
Well, there were early inklings, like Nikola Tesla thinking he picked up signals from Mars way back in 1896. And a funny thing, in 1924, a national radio silence day to try and hear Martian messages. Didn't work, obviously. But modern SETI really kicked off with a paper in 1959 by Philip Morrison and Giuseppe Cocconi. They suggested searching the microwave part of the spectrum. That led directly to Frank Drake. His Project Ozma in 1960 was the first real attempt. He pointed the Green Bank telescope at a couple of stars, focused on the water hole frequency. That's a quiet spot in the radio spectrum between hydrogen and hydroxyl emissions. The idea was maybe that's a natural universal channel for communication. Ozma didn't find anything, but it was the beginning. And then, of course, the big one everyone remembers, the WOW signal in 1977. A really strong and narrow-band signal picked up by Ohio State's Big Ear telescope, lasted 72 seconds, never heard again, still unexplained, still unconfirmed.
Right, the WOW signal. So from those early days, SETI got more ambitious, more sophisticated. I remember reading about NASA's Project Cyclops plan in the 70s, this huge array of 1,500 dishes. Imagine that. It never got built, but the ideas influenced things. Then you had smaller projects like Harvard Suitcase SETI, portable gear in the early 80s, and later, Meta and Beta, developing these really smart multi-channel analyzers to filter out earthly noise, looking for those telltale Doppler shifts.
Exactly. And today, the search continues with some major projects. The Allen Telescope Array, the ATA, is kind of a mini Cyclops, 42 dishes running pretty much constantly. They find millions of potential signals, but so far it all gets classified as noise or RFI radio frequency interference from us. There's Serendip, which cleverly piggybacks on other radio astronomy observations, analyzing data in the background. And the really big one right now is Breakthrough Listen. Huge funding, $100 million over 10 years, started in 2015, using thousands of hours on major telescopes like Green Bank and Parkes. They're even working with the TESS exoplanet hunters. And you can't forget China's FAST telescope, the world's biggest dish. SETI is a key part of its mission. They actually reported some candidate signals recently, but those were pretty quickly put down to interference from Earth. Still, the capability is there.
And it's not just radio anymore, is it? People are looking for lasers too. Optical SETI. Searching for these super brief, super bright flashes of light, or maybe continuous laser beams across interstellar space. Projects at places like Harvard-Smithsonian, UC Berkeley, the Laser SETI Initiative. It opens up another whole avenue.
It does, and theoretically, people are pushing boundaries too, thinking about things like, could civilizations use quantum communication over vast distances? How would we even detect that? And developing smarter algorithms to maybe decode signals, even if we don't know the language or the structure. They've shown they can reconstruct things like the Arecibo message, even when it's buried in noise, which is pretty cool. It raises the question, are we missing signals just because they don't look like what we expect?
So we're listening for radio, looking for lasers, thinking about quantum stuff. But what if the evidence isn't a signal at all? What if it's, well, stuff, physical objects? That brings us to SIA, the search for extraterrestrial artifacts. The idea that maybe sending physical probes is a better way to communicate over cosmic time. People are actually looking for potential alien spacecraft parked in stable spots near Earth and the Moon, those Lagrangian points, like finding a message in a bottle, but the bottle is maybe an alien probe sitting out there.
Exactly. These physical clues fall under the umbrella of technosignatures, direct evidence of technology. You can sort of categorize them. First, massive astroengineering projects. Things like Dyson spheres, those theoretical shells built around stars to capture all their energy. You'd spot them by excess heat, infrared, or maybe a star just vanishing. Or Shkadosh thrusters, megastructures to move entire stars. Wild stuff, though it has to be said, surveys of like 100,000 galaxies haven't found any obvious signs of these yet. Then you have planetary signals. Maybe persistent lights on the dark side of an exoplanet cities. Or excess heat, weird chemicals in the atmosphere suggesting industry or terraforming. And finally, the most obvious one. Spacecraft, either in our solar system or maybe detectable around other stars.
And this loops right back to where we started. When someone like George Leonard talks about finding somebody else on the moon, he's essentially claiming direct observation of technosignatures right here in our own cosmic backyard. It's not a faint signal from light years away, it's supposed structures and machines right next door, potentially. Okay, so we have these claims about the moon and this massive global search effort, but despite everything, we still face Fermi's paradox, Enrico Fermi's famous question, basically, where is everybody? Given the size and age of the universe, shouldn't advanced civilizations be common? So why the silence? In SETI circles, they call it the Great Silence. It's this huge contradiction. High probability, zero evidence.
It's the elephant in the room for SETI, for sure. And there are tons of proposed answers. Maybe intelligent life is just incredibly rare. The rare Earth hypothesis. Maybe they communicate in ways we can't even conceive of yet. Quantum entanglement. Neutrinos? Who knows? Maybe interstellar travel is just fundamentally too hard or too slow. Or the really depressing one. Maybe civilizations just don't last long enough. They invent technology, then destroy themselves. Someone named Sebastian von Horner actually calculated the average lifespan might only be 6,500 years. A blink of an eye, cosmically speaking.
Wow, 6,500 years. That's sobering. It reminds me of Timothy Ferris's idea, the interstellar internet. He imagined this cosmic network of automated archives, storing knowledge from civilizations that died out, communicating silently with focused beams, maybe with a few nodes broadcasting for newcomers like us to find. It's a poetic, if melancholy, thought.
It highlights the sheer difficulty of detection. Space is just unbelievably vast, even with our best telescopes. Think about it. Our own radio and TV signals have only reached about 100 light years out. That's nothing. For us to detect an alien signal, it would probably have to be incredibly powerful or deliberately beamed right at us. We're basically listening for a shout in a hurricane across an ocean.
Which leads some people to say, well, maybe we shouldn't just listen. Maybe we should shout back. That's active SETI, or MATI messaging to extraterrestrial intelligence, sending signals out on purpose, like the Arecibo message in '74.
And that sparks a whole debate. A big one. Stephen Hawking was famously against it. He warned it could be foolhardy to advertise our existence. His point was, look at human history. When advanced cultures meet less advanced ones, it often doesn't end well for the less advanced. Why risk it? He basically said, lay low. But others, like prominent SETI scientists Jill Tarter and Seth Shostak, argue against that. They suggest any civilization advanced enough for interstellar communication or travel would likely have outgrown aggressive, violent tendencies. They'd have to cooperate to survive that long. Tarter thinks it's probably too soon for us to start shouting, but she's a huge advocate for continuing to listen intently.
And SETI itself isn't without critics, right? People sometimes call it wishful thinking or say it's unfalsifiable. You can't disprove aliens just because you haven't heard them. Maybe they use smoke signals. You know, it really shows how hard it is to search for something when you don't even know what it looks like or how it behaves.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really important to draw a line between scientific SETI and ufology. Jill Tarter is very clear on this. SETI uses astronomy tools, looks for technology from far away, aims for verifiable data. Ufology, she argues, often relies on anecdotes, witness accounts, photos of ambiguous things, not the same scientific rigor. That said, things are maybe shifting slightly. You now have efforts like the Galileo Project at Harvard, which is trying to apply rigorous scientific methods to studying unidentified aerial phenomena, or UAPs, so the lines might be blurring a bit, or at least the scientific interest in UAP is growing.
So where does all this leave us? What does it mean for you listening right now? We've gone from these really stunning claims about our own moon possibly being occupied, backed by photos, seismic readings, insider whispers, all the way to the vast, patient scientific search across the galaxy. Both approaches, whether you believe the moon claims or focus on SETI, they really force us to reconsider our place, don't they?
They absolutely do. Whether the ultimate answer is hidden in the shadows of a lunar crater or arrives as a faint whisper from a distant star, the fundamental question won't go away. Are we alone? The evidence we've discussed today, even the controversial stuff, it pushes us to question our assumptions, to be open to different possibilities, and you have to wonder if advanced life was already here, maybe on the moon, maybe visiting, or if they are sending signals we just haven't figured out how to read yet. How would knowing that fundamentally change everything for humanity?
Keep looking up. Keep questioning. Maybe look again at those old moon photos. The universe, maybe even our own cosmic neighborhood, could hold surprises we haven't even begun to grasp. And perhaps, just perhaps, the biggest discovery isn't waiting light years away, but might be much, much closer than we think.